Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a high-stakes economic story that has Wall Street and Main Street on edge. We're talking clashing policies, some really big numbers, and a major decision that just dropped.
All right, let's just jump right in. The U.S. economy, it's sending some seriously mixed signals, and it's making everybody ask one huge question. Are we really on a path to stable growth, or are we just taking a massive gamble on what comes next?
So if you just look at the surface, right, the headline numbers, they look pretty solid. But when you dig just a little bit deeper, there's this real anxiety bubbling up about what's around the corner. It really paints a picture of a deeply conflicted economy.
And, look at how divided this picture is. On the one hand, you've got this amazing job growth plus a historically low unemployment rate. Can't argue with that. But then, on the other hand, inflation is just sticking around. It's stubborn. And to top it off, a recent survey of economists says there's a 1 in 3 chance of a recession in the next year. So, good news, bad news.
So that leads us to the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? The one number everybody has been waiting for, and it just dropped. We're talking about the official growth number for the second quarter.
And here it is, 3.0%. That is a huge number. That's the first official look at Q2 growth, and it's a massive rebound, especially when you remember the economy actually shrank in the first quarter. Big turnaround.
Okay, but this is exactly where the big debate kicks off. Is this 3% a sign of real, sustainable economic strength? Or is it kind of like a mirage, something temporary that's driven by something else entirely?
Yeah, this one number basically splits economists right down the middle into two camps. Camp 1 says, hey, this is real productivity. It's a sign of a solid foundation. But Camp 2, they're pointing to those new tariffs that are about to hit on August 1st. And they're arguing this isn't growth, it's fear-based buying. A mad dash to buy stuff before it all gets more expensive. And that tariff question, it brings us to the first major force that's really pulling at the economy right now, the administration's tariff policy. Honestly, it is at the absolute center of this whole debate.
So on one side, you have the administration. They argue that these tariffs are a vital tool. They say they protect American jobs and give them leverage to get better trade deals. But then you have a lot of economists and business owners saying, hold on. They warn that these tariffs basically act like a tax. They raise costs for everyone, from factories to you and me, and they create this cloud of uncertainty that just freezes up investment. And the White House is not shy about their position. It's crystal clear. As their spokesman, Kush Desai, puts it, they really see this policy as the key to bring back American manufacturing, to making that Made in USA label a dominant force around the world all over again.
Okay, so that's one major force. Now let's talk about the second one, which is pulling in the complete opposite direction, and that is the U.S. Federal Reserve. They have a totally different set of worries. See, the Fed's number one job, their biggest fear, is avoiding this economic nightmare scenario called stagflation. Just think about it. It's the worst of both worlds. Prices are going up, so everything costs more. But at the same time, the economy is slowing down and people are losing jobs. It's a really, really painful trap to fall into. So this puts the Fed in a really tough spot. They have two main choices, right? Choice 1, cut interest rates. That makes borrowing cheaper, it could give the economy a boost, and it happens to be what the president has been demanding. Or choice 2, hold rates steady, maybe even high, to fight that inflation number, which remember is at 2.7%. That's still above their 2% target. So do you boost the economy or fight inflation? And what makes this all so fascinating is the drama inside the Fed itself. We're talking about a deep division. Two of the Fed's governors, Michelle Bowman and Christopher Waller, were actually expected to publicly disagree with the final decision, to dissent. They wanted a rate cut. And a public break like that, with two governors dissenting, that has not happened in more than 30 years. It's a really big deal. And this is something a former top Fed official, Esther George, talked about recently. She said, you have to have the courage to say, I see it differently. She argues that these disagreements, these different points of view, are absolutely essential to getting to the right decision in the end, even if it looks kind of messy to us on the outside. Okay, so you've got the White House pushing tariffs this way, and the Fed worried about inflation pulling that way.
how does this big policy tug of war actually hit home? For your life, for your wallet. Let's zoom in now on the real-world impact. First up, there's the direct hit to your wallet. A study from Yale University's Budget Lab, they crunched the numbers and they estimate that these tariffs could end up costing the average American household an extra $2,400 a year. That's a serious chunk of change. And it's not just households, right? Businesses are feeling this squeeze, and they're feeling it hard. An analysis from the Washington Center for Equitable Growth projects that tariffs could jack up costs for U.S. factories by anywhere from 2 to, get this, 4.5%. That eats right into their profits and forces them to make some really tough choices. And here is the human cost of that squeeze. This is what it looks like on the ground. This is Josh Smith. He's the founder of Montana Knife Company. He had to pay a $77,250 tariff on a critical machine he needed from Germany because, well, no one makes it here in the US. And he says that's money he absolutely could have used to hire more people. So you've got all these competing pressures, right? These strong growth numbers, these fears about tariffs, the political demands. It all came to a head today with this one high-stakes decision from the Federal Reserve.
And the verdict is in. The Fed is holding interest rates steady. They're not moving. So despite all that internal division, despite all the pressure from the outside, they have decided to stand pat. So why? What's the thinking here? Well, the crucial point seems to be this. The Fed looked at the threat of tariffs pushing prices even higher, and they decided that fighting inflation was the more urgent job right now. They just couldn't risk pouring fuel on that fire.
So this big decision, when you combine it with the administration's whole tariff strategy, well, it's pretty much set the economic course for the rest of the year. But it brings us right back to where we started, to that one huge lingering question. Are we actually witnessing a moment of real, durable growth that's built on a solid foundation? Or is the economy balanced on a knife's edge, taking a huge, high-stakes gamble where the outcome is, well, it's still very much up in the air? The truth is, the answer is still unfolding.